Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. Well, the Yankees have taken a major step back, returning to their April ways of just being a lethargic, tough team to watch. Really highlighted by getting swept on the road to Detroit, which is like a last place team, and then most recently getting swept at home by the Boston Red Sox. Okay, yes, the Boston Red Sox are a first place team playing well, but still, first time in 10 years getting swept at home against the Boston Red Sox, and where fans now are just getting to the point where they're starting calling for Boone's head and Cashman's head and trade this play, get rid of this person, get rid of this person. A little panicky at that, but still a lot of problems for the Yankees right now. Again, another fresh round of injuries. Yes, some players coming back, but it seems even though you get some players back, some new ones get hurt, and they can never really get the whole team together, never really put this team together. Now, I think a lot of this stuff is still a little panicky. Plenty of baseball left. You know, baseball's a marathon, but there are some significant problems which we'll get into. And the main problem is, which kind of been the theme the whole season so far, the lack of offense. Now, it's not just the Yankees, it's for the rest of baseball, and we'll get into that a little later with some, issues with pitching and some, substances being used to make some of these fastballs faster and these spin rates on these sliders and sinkers a little more. But with the Yankees, their problem is, again, offense. Now, when the other opponent for the Yankees scores 5 or more runs, the Yankees are 0-17. Now, when the Yankees score 5 or more runs, they're 19-2. So, what you got to do? You got to score more runs. And again, with the Yankees, they're not scoring enough. Pitching overall is okay. Bullpen's been great overall. A couple, blown games here and there, but pitching's been rather solid throughout all of this. It's just like the Yankees with all these great hitters and sluggers and all that stuff. They're just not scoring enough runs. As I said before, there's a lot more baseball left to be played through the season, but the Yankees aren't really taking advantage, within their own division, getting slapped around by their opponents. Even the Baltimore Orioles, they struggled with a little bit. They're already 14-20 in their own division. Again, plenty of games to make up, but, you got to be able to beat the teams in your own division, and the Yankees aren't taking advantage of it right now. And at least the Yankees held their own a little bit lately against Tampa, which has been the thorn in the side of the Yankees. But really, the Blue Jays, and again, those are games that even though the Blue Jays are good, the Yankees should take advantage of those games, and they're not. And there's plenty left to go, but still, just a lot of negative signs of the Yankees right now. And again, within their own division, the Red Sox just keep going on. You always think at some point they're gonna come back to earth, but they're not. So the Yankees really though, they're gonna have to get themselves straight, get themselves healthy, and start winning games within their own division. Now, despite being swept by the Red Sox recently, the only good part of that was Michael King. Now, he started the first game on the Friday night, and he threw what they call an immaculate inning. And so what's an immaculate inning? So basically what it means for a pitcher is that you get 3 strikeouts on 9 pitches. So almost like the Bugs Bunny thing a little bit, like strike 1, 2, 3, you're out. Strike 1, 2, 3, you're out. Strike 1, 2, 3, you're out. So Michael King achieved that for the Yankees in the 4th inning. Now he's the 7th Yankee to achieve that, and it's the first time it happened in a Yankees-Red Sox game. Now you might be thinking, who's the last Yankee to throw an immaculate inning? So I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it. The last Yankee to throw an immaculate inning. Dellin Betances back in 2017. Now you know. Now, a recent setback for the Yankees in terms of the injury front has been Corey Kluber. Again, he throws a no-hitter, and then the next game after that, strains his shoulder, has to be taken out of the game, and then you get terrible news that he might not be back till August. So with Kluber, I guess he wanted to get some other opinions. So he actually went to the doctors for the Texas Rangers and the Dodgers to get 3 or 4 other opinions. And they said that his injury, which is again a strained shoulder, wasn't as bad as the Yankees doctor said. So he's going to start to throw. Now again, the original prognosis for him was like, don't even pick up a ball for 4 weeks. Well, little good news for the Yankees. He's at least playing catch, a little long throwing. Again, not on a mound yet, but at least he's starting to amp up his arm sooner than you originally thought. So he may be back sooner. Again, it's probably not going to be like, within June, maybe not within July, but at least the original news is not as serious as we all first thought. And another blow for the Yankees in terms of the injury front has been Luke Voit. As you may recall, he wasn't there to start the season, had the off-season surgery instead of playing through pain, and he came back. Didn't really come back really hitting the ground running, wasn't that great, and then now it turns out he has a strained oblique. Not sure why that happened, but he's going to be out for a while. They're predicting maybe he'll be back towards the end of June. But again, another blow for the Yankees. Now, with Mike Ford, was given a great opportunity, but again, has not been able to take advantage of it. And, we figured maybe, we didn't get the Mike Ford, but we've been got like 2 seasons ago. We were getting the Mike Ford of last season, which, wasn't good at all, and really hasn't been good this season. So the Yankees send him down to AAA, call up Chris Giddens, who has been hitting well down there, batting .283, 4 home runs, and an OPS a little over 1. So that's impressive enough for the Yankees to give him a shot at first base. So give him a little time there. But again, with these Yankees, it's just like a spinning wheel rotation of guys coming back, then going right back, getting injured again, trying to get the whole team back. So with the Yankees, with Luke Voit, I don't say it's a big blow. I mean, because he's not really. I mean, not really great defensively. So I guess really anyone can play defense. They put LeMayo there a little bit at defense, but again, this goes to show that they just can't get this whole team back cohesively. Now, one bomber working his way back has been Zack Britton, who, as you may recall, back in spring training, they found a bone chip in his elbow, so he had the surgery to remove it, and has been working his way back. So he's in the minors right now, throwing some innings, so he should be back quite soon. Again, the bullpen has been overall good for the Yankees, so to have a quality arm like that, just to add to it, has been great. But again, it's really more a situation of just getting this team back together in time where they can really go on a run and sort of make up ground like they did kind of in early May. And another reliever the Yankees are counting on is Darren O'Day. Now, as you may recall, the Yankees signed him to a one-year deal. 38 years old, came out, started, a couple of games early on, was very good, but then he had some soreness in his rotator cuff that has set him down for a while. So now he's doing some long tossing and hasn't gotten on the mound yet, so he's still going to be a ways away. Again, you're going to assume that once he's able to throw, much like Zack Britton, they're going to have him in the minors for a couple of games just to get his arm amped up to bring him to the majors. But again, that's another weapon that the Yankees should be expecting back rather soon. And of course, you might be wondering what's going on with Luis Severino. Again, yet another injured player that's coming back. Well, he's finally taken to the mound. His first start now is for a low A affiliate, the Tampa Tarpons, but he's finally on the mound throwing. Again, his first game since getting Tommy John surgery. Goes 2.2 innings, throws 34 pitches. Now, you might ask yourself, is the velocity there? Well, he averaged 96 miles per hour, hitting 98 once, so getting his way back. Still, you're going to assume he's going to get a handful more starts to build up his endurance and build up his strength. So they don't really have any timetable on him. You're probably looking maybe All-Star game a little after the All-Star game, which is good for the Yankees. Now, for starting pitcher of the Yankees really hasn't been the issue because Cole's been good. Kluber was good, but he went down a little bit. But the Yankees have a couple extra starters. Herman's been good. Montgomery's been good. They spot King a little bit while he's okay. So Talion's been okay, even though he really hasn't had the wins yet. But of course, most of that is because the Yankee offense has been backing him up. So to get Severino back, I think again it's good news, but it's not really where the Yankees really need someone back to hit the ball more. But just just in terms of it is in motion now. Obviously, when Severino comes back, that means someone's going to get bumped. We'll see what happens with that. And again, it's a good problem to have too much starting pitching than less. But you know how it always is, and this kind of happens with Kluber. When you have too much starting pitching, they say these things work themselves out. So what happens? Kluber goes down, he's out for a while. So you know what's going to happen? Severino's going to come back, and then next thing you know, like Talion's going to pull a quad or something. And a big disappointment has been the return of Giancarlo Stanton. Now, as you may recall, he went down with the quad injury. And just before that injury, he was really hot. He was like perhaps you would say the Yankees' best hitter, but he went down. And since coming back, he's been ice cold. Again, going 2 for 23 in his initial at-bats with 11 strikeouts. And just leaving fans bewildered as what's going on with this guy. And then Boone is kind of baby a little bit, like, yeah, he's back. But they say, well, even though he's back, he's still feeling the effects of the quad injury and have to give him some planned days off. So really weird with this stuff. I don't know what's wrong with this guy. But, I'm not going to go on just yet because, again, if you remember last postseason, he was probably the Yanks' best hitter. And, again, early on this season, he was really raking. He was looking good, but then he went down. But, again, since coming back, really has been an absolute zero. So it's for the Yankees and the fans, it's got to hope he finally gets his way again and starts getting his stride and, starts making some good contact because, again, this team needs to score some runs. And this lack of offense has helped people like Chris Kitten's coming from the minors, but also has helped our old friend Miguel Andrhart, who, again, really hasn't been given opportunities, mainly because, Urshela has had third base on lock, and then Andrhart had a couple of, setbacks with injury with his wrist, but now that there's a desperation for offense, it did open the door for Miguel Andrhart, but it's out in left field. So they have him out in left field a little bit, as mentioned, in the last episode with Christian from NYY Sports Talk, which is okay, great, he's out there, he always has a bat, so you always rely on him to be a good hitter, which, he has been contributing a little bit, but still, in terms of defense, for the long term, you don't want that because, sometimes he plays well, but sometimes he misplays some balls that wouldn't normally be caught, but then end up being a double. And overall for this team, since, the Yankees struggle so much to score runs, you really need a really good defense. So, we'll see what Miguel Andrhart, we assume over time he'll get better like that. But again, for the long term, you really don't want Miguel Andrhart out in the outfield. And of course, what else is going on? Fans are, going crazy. They're calling for Boone's head. They're calling a little Cashman's head a little bit, which I think is a little crazy talk right now. Now, again, this is Aaron Boone. This is the same manager who won 100-plus games in his first 2 seasons, his first 2 full seasons as the Yankee manager. So I just doubt for some reason, also now he can't manage, doesn't know what he's doing. And the same with Cashman. I mean, if you look at some of the moves he made in the offseason, I mean, he pretty much gave what everyone wanted. I mean, everyone wanted DJ back, and Cashman got DJ back. Now, the only move that, or non-move he didn't make was not, signing Bauer, which I think was a ridiculous amount of money, or not getting JT Realmuto and going with Gary Sanchez. But if you want to break those situations down, Realmuto, again, he signed a 5-year deal for $115 million to play for the Phillies versus just giving 1 year for Sanchez, for $6 million. Now, the right choice was, I think, was Sanchez, just because, all right, you're paying a player just for 1 year for $6 million, which, again, we've seen the good Sanchez before, so it's not like, it was a shot in the dark. So that was just the safer bet versus Realmuto, who, okay, yeah, maybe it's the safer bet, but now you got to pay this guy for 5 years, all that money, while the Yankees are trying to stay under the luxury tax. Didn't make sense for the Yankees. It would make more sense to give Sanchez a shot, to say, all right, let's give him 1 more year. We know it's there. Maybe he can do it. Again, I thought he would have a really good season and like go for a big contract. Hasn't been the case so far. Now there's a lot more baseball left to be played, but again, it's kind of a little dangerous for Sanchez. I mean, he's just really hardly not making contact, and if he does make contact, it's right at someone. So combination of bad luck, but this also being terrible. And for Cashman, again, I think he made the right move. Give Sanchez one shot, and not give all this money to JT Realmuto, who it would have been the same situation like Sanchez. He would have been coming here, Stanton coming here, another player making a lot of money and not producing, and that would have been even a worse situation. And again, going back to DJ LeMahieu, hasn't been good this season, and he's batting around 250. Only with 3 home runs and 14 RBIs. In fact, there was a stretching back in May, he went 3 weeks between late May to early June where he only had 1 extra base hit. So you really can't put this on Boone. You really can't put this on Cashman. What can Boone really do? I mean, he has a situation where sometimes he's playing Tyler Wade out in center field. I mean, this Tyler Wade is he's a 220 slap hitter. But just the Yankees, with Hicks down and just the injuries and no one else producing, he's forced to put something like Wade out in center field. I mean, you really can't put that on Boone. That's not his fault. And with Cashman, all right, you can look at certain things. Again, he's a GM. He's the one who puts the team together. But none of his moves were outrageous or terrible. The right move was, again, go 12 years for Corey Kluber versus shell out $30-40 million per season for Bauer. That didn't make sense. So I think Cashman made the right moves in the offseason. Boone, all right, you always say, all right, you should have pinch hit this guy, bring this pitcher, that pitcher, but that's not really the problem with the Yankees. It's more the offense themselves, and these players haven't been hitting. And again, it's going through this image with Voit going down for a while, Stanton gone for a while. You start the season without Zack Britton. O'Day, you bring in as a, he's supposed to be a 7th and 8th inning man. He pitches a couple games and he's going down for a chunk of season. You lose Hicks for basically the year, and of course Kluber now recently, he's going to be gone for about probably about 1/3 of the season. So you really can't put these things on the manager, and you can't put these things on the GM. And with the Yankees, this is not the old days with George with knee-jerk reaction. So I don't think Hal Steinbrenner would even consider making any sort of moves like this until the season ends. I think the only situation he would, if let's just say things completely fall apart and they go 20 games under 500 and there's infighting in the clubhouse and stuff like that, which I do not think the Yankees are going to get close to that situation. They're having a bit of a rough spot right now. Again, if you remember back in April, they were under 500 and probably just as bad or as worse as they are now. And then the Yankees got on it, they got it together finally in early May, started winning some series. Yeah, and I would say, the highlights was probably sweeping the White Sox, and then, Kluber throws a no-hitter, and you're like, wow, now this team's going to take off, and then they hit a brick wall. So I think they could kind of pick themselves up again, and again, yeah, Boston's doing great. They're double digits over 500, but still plenty of baseball left where the Yankees can kind of dig themselves out of the hole. I mean, yeah, they're in fourth place in the AL East standings, but relatively close to the other teams where in 2 weeks they could really make that up and sort of get right back to kind of where they are just before Kluber went down. And one of the main reasons that Yankees fans have been upset, yeah, the team's not doing good, but the arch rival Boston Red Sox have been doing great, so I think that kind of adds fuel to the fire. And the Red Sox, as you may recall, even before the season started, we had Terry from the Bastards of Boston Baseball podcast on, and he was on the same page where, we really got no one on this team. There's really nothing to be excited about. Luckily, we'll maybe be a fourth or fifth place type team, which I kind of everyone expected, but no, the Red Sox have defied the odds. Now, some of the players, some names you might be familiar with, having Xander Bogaerts has been having a good season so far. Rafael Devers having a good season, ready with 15 home runs and 48 RBIs. But if you look at the rest of the lineup, there's nothing that really stands out. Wow, look at this lineup. But they're just scoring enough runs, pitching enough. And again, they have a rotation that includes Nathan Eovaldi, who, yeah, again, Yankee fans are familiar with. He was a Yankee for a while, but not like any sort of superstar like that. Eduardo Rodriguez, Garrett Richards, Martin Perez, Nick Pivetta. I mean, you look at this rotation, like, all right, how these guys are first-place teams. So if you look at the Yankees, I mean, just look at the roster of the Yankees, the players they have, the pitches versus the Red Sox, what they have. Now, again, a lot of these Yankees are hurt right now, but the Yankees have the better roster. But it's just frustrating where you have this Red Sox roster who's not as good, not as quality names in there, but they're just overperforming. So at some point, I just think that's going to come back to earth. Now they're going to get Chris Sale back at some point, and they'll just strengthen the rotation. But still, it's just hard to imagine that they're going to keep the Red Sox will be able to keep that up for an entire season. Whereas the Yankees, now right now they kind of look like a bit of a pitiful giant in a way, and you're seeing a lot of negative signs. Even players like, that even if they're not hurt, but like Gio Urshela, he's playing, but he's got the knee injury, he's playing through pain, and the frustrations him out a little bit. You see like Gleyber Torres smashing his helmet on the floor, DJ LeMahieu, who's kind of a even keeled guy, smashing his bat and helmet on the floor. So the Yankees are frustrated. It could be two, and again, it could be two things. It could be a situation where maybe it's just a special season for the Red Sox, which, again, no one would have predicted, would be insane. Because, again, the Red Sox, again, projected to just be a little better than Baltimore, which really isn't saying much. But, no, they've really taken off. Or this could be a situation with the Yankees where they just finally got to get everyone back. And then once they do, they'll hit a stride and get hot and then, be the Yankees we thought would be. And, again, I'm kind of leaning towards that. It's just right now the only Yankees that could kind of hold their head up high have been Aaron Judge, who, again, has been healthy pretty much the whole season, which, has been great. It's great for news. He's been hitting when he gets his chance. I'll say, I would put Garrett Cole in that situation. He's been performing well for the Yankees. And Aroldis Chapman, who's been fabulous for the Yankees so far. Those are only really three Yankees that they can say, all right, we've been doing our job. The rest haven't. So I think finally some more are going to contribute. It's hard to imagine DJ LeMahieu being this terrible for a whole season. I personally think maybe if the reason he isn't hitting well is because of an injury. Now, if you remember last season, he did have a finger injury, which supposedly had the same injury back when he was with the Colorado Rockies. Perhaps that's cropping up on him, which is causing. Now, if it's an injury situation, then that's bad news. But if it's just like a psychological or bad luck situation, then it should be a situation where DJ is going to turn it around. But again, you got to give hats off at this moment to the Red Sox. And again, that's just what's really putting salt in the wound for the Yankee fans that, the Red Sox have quite an inferior roster compared to the Yankees, yet the Red Sox so far putting together a really good season for themselves. As we mentioned before, the Yankee offense has been pitiful, but really it's been the case for the entire Major League Baseball. And you got someone like DeGrom right now for the Mets, who has like an ERA under 1, which is insane. So now we kind of mentioned this before the season even started, and I kind of thought it was just nothing type of news, but now it's been reported by ESPN that now supposedly the umpires in Major League Baseball are going to start looking at possibly, again, foreign substances being used by the pitchers, mainly pine tar, to get a better grip on the ball. Again, now this is kind of a weird thing with baseball. It's like players know about it. They don't really want to talk about it. Now, even opposing players kind of know about it, but it's like sort of like hush us, not talk about it. Now, most hitters will say that they don't mind the pitchers using some sort of grip because if you got someone throwing a 100-mile-per-hour fastball at you, you want to make sure they have control of that. So they kind of know that, yeah, some of these pitchers are using something on the grip a little bit, and as long as it's not too obvious, they kind of let it go. Now, traditionally in baseball, you put something under the bill, you put something on the glove, you put something under your belt just to rub to get a little bit, and it's kind of, again, it kind of accepted because everyone sort of does it. So, if you're an opposing player, you're not going to want to call out somebody because, hey, your pitchers are probably doing the same thing. And, of course, infamously, you may remember back, again, another Red Sox Yankee game a couple of seasons ago when the Yankees had Michael Pineda. He basically had it on his neck, which was kind of, now it was so obvious that the Red Sox manager at the time had to come out and tell the umpire to do something about it. And of course, Pineda was pulled out of the game. But unless it's grossly obvious, most players and other managers aren't going to say anything about it. But I guess just, maybe with the lack of offense, with now across baseball, that, I don't know if that affects TV ratings or not. Probably does a little bit because, you watch these games and it's just, strikeouts, and pitches dominating, which maybe some old school baseball fans may like. But again, it doesn't really make it exciting to watch. Sometimes like the Yankees are like a rerun of the Golden Girls. So now, Major League Baseball is stepping up with this. Now, when the season even started, supposedly, the umpires gave an edict that they're going to start checking equipment, again, like gloves and things, just to see if there's some pine tar on it. And again, they were looking at Garrett Cole, they were looking at Bauer. And remember with Cole, there was supposedly some text messages Back, he would say, hey, remember those bowls you rubbed up for me back, when we were in New York back in like April, supposedly when it's cold a little bit. So again, they were looking at that a little bit, but never really went anywhere. But again, they might start looking at this closer just because Cole and DeGrom and Bauer and a lot of these pitchers have just been basically untouchable. And offense around baseball has been way down. Right now, the batting average across baseball, at least at this point in the season, is .236, which right now in the history, since it's been tracked, is the lowest ever. For outs, 24.1% of the outs have been on the strikeout. So again, 1 out of every 4 outs is via the strikeout. You take a player like, with the Yankees, Yogi Berra, which I'll get into in a second. Yeah, the amount of strikeouts he would have for a whole season, you could count on 1 or 2 hands. But now just everyone's striking out. And if you look at the pitchers, their velocity right now, again, being first, since in history of baseball being tracked, the average fastball right now is 93.6, and the average spin rate is 2,317 RPM. So those are both the highest velocity and the highest spin rate in recent season. In recent seasons for baseball. So something's definitely off. And now, Major League Baseball said, we're going to start looking into this. What they're going to start doing is now, supposedly for starting pitchers, at a minimum twice, they're going to be checked out by umpires before they take the mound. And then other pitchers like relievers, it's just going to be random. They're going to check them out to say, hey, you got anything on you? Let me check your gloves, maybe like that. And if you are caught, supposedly you get suspended for 10 games. So if you're a starting pitcher and you suspended for 10 games, you look like you could lose 2 starts. So obviously now a starting pitcher might just say, hey, what the heck, 2 starts is not a big deal. Where it would hurt the Yankees if one of the relievers, like let's say Chad Green or Chapman, gets caught doing that. Well, if they're out for 10 days, that's kind of a big blow because you might need them a couple times a week to close out games or keep a game close. So it'll be a bigger blow if a bullpen guy gets caught doing that. And in the minors already, 10 pitchers have been suspended for, again, using foreign substances. They haven't done that yet on the major league level, but you're going to start seeing that, especially, again, with really pitching dominating the game. And again, they try to do some of baseball early this season to generate some more offense. Again, as you may recall, they loosened up the stitches on the baseball. Supposedly that was supposed to maybe inspire more contact hitting and less home runs, just to get some more action in the game. But that really hasn't been the case. There's actually been less action just because the pitches have been so dominant. So you just want to look at a reason why. And again, as some of those numbers I mentioned before, when things look out of whack, there's usually a problem. And, we could just equate this back to the offensive side of the baseball when, for example, you had back in '98, McGuire and Sosa both getting, smashing Maris's record in the same season. And then you got Sosa putting up 60 home runs like 3 seasons in a row. And then you have, Barry Bonds breaks McGuire's record of 71 home runs by hitting 73 just 3 seasons later. So when you have outrageous numbers and things going crazy, there's usually a reason why. So, and for Garrett Cole, I don't think this is a situation where it's going to be like kryptonite, like, oh my God, I can't use a pine toe, I'm not going to be a good pitcher anymore. I'm sure it's a very, it helps a little bit, but, I still think he's going to be fine. He's still going to be Cole. Does it, move something? Does it help him an inch, a little bit more, to a few inches? Probably. But again, I think it's not going to be that big of an effect. And again, even going back to the Pineda situation from several seasons ago with the Yankees, again, David Ortiz, who again was an opposing batter, said, "Hey, look, I'm up there at the bat. I just make sure these guys have control of the ball. If they want to use a little something, fine. I don't feel like getting hit in the head, and I don't think anyone does, especially with some of these velocities now. I mean, pretty much 98 to 100 miles per hour is like the norm. So you may want to make sure, especially, whether it's a little rainy situation out or the beginning of the season where the temperature's a little cold and you don't have a good grip on the ball, that these players have a little something. So again, I don't think this is going to blow up to anything big, but I just think, it's, again, something that Major League Baseball wants to look at. And it's been, again, going on for a while. Even, you may recall back, when the Yankees played the Detroit Tigers back in the 2006 playoffs. Again, Kenny Rogers, he had like a brown substance across his whole entire hand, and nobody wanted to get into it. And I think a reporter asked Kenny Rogers, and he kind of, got pissed off about it. So this has been going on for baseball. But I just think it's a situation where, like, hey, look, it's just, we're living in a different age now. There's cameras all over the place, and we're gonna have to hide it better. So they'll find some happy medium, maybe. If you're gonna put some rub on your fingers, or your hand or something, you do it in the dugout before you take the mound. Just, you do it there, and just don't have something on you when you physically get on the mound, just in case the umpire does search you. And really, again, this all just goes back to, again, the lack of offense in baseball we've just seen this season. And hey, look, we got to do something about it. Let's make the the playing field a little more even. Now again, they take the steroids out of baseball for the hitters, and also, you know, lately, you know, they took away the smartwatches. You can't do that. You can't go back in the security booth and look at the footage of the catcher to see what fingers he's throwing down. So they've eliminated that part for the offense. So now they're kind of looking at the pitchers. All right, let's look at these pitchers a little bit closely. Start taking away the little things they've been doing, to cheat a little bit and get ahead of the game, and just make the things a little bit more even. So for the Yankees, again, I think it's a situation where not only baseball is making it known, but there's probably a lot of communications within baseball, within the teams, with the clubhouse, stuff we don't even hear about, where they say, hey, look, guys, we're going to start looking at this stuff, so clean up your act, or just do it in a way where no one sees it. I remember a call a couple of weeks ago, a number of the Yankees and Gleyber Torres came down with COVID. Now, supposedly where this all happened was during a rain delay. A bunch of the coaches in the room, and it was like a super spreader situation, and Torres tested positive, and as well as a number of the Yankees coaches. It was actually kind of big news. Even some big news outlets kind of picked up the story. Like half the coaching staff, and pretty much almost all the coaching staff, was wiped out with that. But one by one, they came back, and of course, Torres has been back. And actually, since Torres has been back, probably playing his best baseball of the whole season. Not that COVID would help with that, but who knows, whatever. But of course, with Phil Nevin now, that took a little interesting situation, because he was still, showing some complications from COVID, even though they kind of cleared him to rejoin the team. So it turns out with pitching coach Matt Blake and him were in front of the hotel, and Blake was kind of observing him. It's like, something's not right with this guy. So he actually was smart enough to call the Yankee trainer, say, hey, let's look at Phil Nevin a little closer. Now they do a blood test on him. Turns out he has a staph infection in his blood, and of course that could be very fatal. So good thing they caught it early. So Phil Nevin is back with the team, but he's not back at third base yet. Again, he's the third base coach. I guess this in terms of stamina and be able to stand up all innings. So they have Phil Nevin in the dugout, not resuming his duties yet, but at least, they caught this thing, which is, a blessing, because, again, that could have been fatal. And hopefully at some point he regains his strength where he can, rejoin, be back on the field of the Yankees at third base and do something to get these hitters to start hitting again. And getting away from baseball a little bit, and probably a little more important in terms of the world of things, we very recently passed the 77th anniversary of the D-Day invasion. And for those of you who aren't paying attention in history class, of course, D-Day invasion occurred on June 6th, 1944, and that's when the Allied powers stormed the beaches of Normandy in France against the Nazis and kind of pretty much turned the tide of the war with that invasion. Is quite impressive. Now, what you may not know or may not have heard before, that there was a young 19-year-old named Lawrence Peter Berra who actually was there, was manning a small boat off the beaches of Normandy. Now, this person is known as Yogi Berra. You ever heard of that player? So, had a distinguished World War II career, and if you might recall, last season, we actually had the coordinator of the Yogi Berra Museum on the show, and Berra had an impressive career in the Navy during World War II, getting a number of awards, including a Purple Heart, which is pretty impressive, because usually to get a Purple Heart, it has to be like some sort of mortality involved with that, so luckily Berra was able to avoid that. Had a great career during World War II, and of course, when he came back, eventually broke in and became one of the greatest Yankees of all time. Now you know.